Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
All right, we're back here on the Brown Sports Bag. John Butler had to step out real quick to take a phone call, so when he gets back in here, we'll talk a little more football, but I'll start out by talking about this Glasgow-Russellville game that was played Friday night over in Russellville. The Scotties were coming off of a pretty lopsided loss the Friday night before against Woodford County, and it was curious to see how they were going to bounce back. It was going to be curious to see what kind of intensity they had to open the game, and to be honest, they struggled a little bit early in the game, but as the night went on, the humidity and whatnot and the heat, I think, finally kind of played in the Scotties' favor. They took control of the game, running the ball. They ran for 441 total yards, I think it was. I mean, just had a huge night on the ground. Led by Kieran Stockton, but, he kind of set the tone up the middle. He also had a big touchdown run. That opened up some other lanes for Hunter Scott, who had over 100 yards, and he had a couple of touchdowns. And then Andrew Phillips busted one off there on a misdirection play. I think that one was like 66 yards, I think that run was. So, they bounced back pretty well and played pretty well overall as the game went along. One of the things that Coach Jeff Garman mentioned to me after the game, though, was they had to cut down on their turnovers and their mistakes, especially in those areas. Because as he pointed out, you don't turn the ball over and win many games. Now, on the flip side of that, Glasgow had a blocked punt that went in their favor. And then they forced, I think, 5 total turnovers before the game was all over with. John Carter Myers picked off 2 passes. The last one he picked off was pretty spectacular. It was a kind of one-hand grab back behind himself to grab that one. It's a pretty spectacular interception. So, that the running game did set the tone. Glasgow didn't pass all that effectively. John's back with us now. Glasgow didn't pass all that effectively. Only completed 2 passes. They both were key passes. John, I was just discussing how Glasgow eventually wore down Russellville on Friday night to win that game 49-35. Overall, bounced back pretty well, ran the ball effectively, didn't pass the ball too effectively. One of the things Garmin mentioned to me after the game was they had to cut down on their turnovers to win games. You don't win a whole lot of games when you turn the ball over like they did, but they also forced the turnovers.
Yeah, that's a big win for them. That's a great comeback after the disappointment of opening night against Woodford County to go on the road and beat it seems like a much improved Russellville team. It doesn't surprise me that Glasgow beat Russellville, but after the opening night against Woodford County, I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And they just ran all over them. 441 yards, I think, on the ground. Mm-hmm. I think Glasgow had 3 players that rushed for over 100. I hadn't heard that. That's been a long time. And one that had 90.
Yeah.
I think Kieran Stockton had 124 and 2 touchdowns, and Hunter Scott had 111 and 3 touchdowns. Andrew Phillips carried for 101, and then John Carter Myers had 90.
Yep.
Plus his usual 2 interceptions defensively.
Yeah.
So, they just made a concerted effort just to flat out physical Russellville. Mm-hmm. Did not throw it very much at all, but didn't have to.
Yeah.
And now they did give up probably more points than they wanted.
Yeah.
And that would be the one small concern that they gave up 52 to Woodford County and
35 to
Russellville. That's not what I expected going into the year, but they got what they wanted. They got to win.
Well, and I will say this, at the 1A level, Russellville, they have 23 players. They have 23 looks like good players, and at the level they're at, those players, especially our quarterback, Lennon Reese, is the guy who really probably gave Glasgow more trouble than anybody else because he's able to stay alive in the pocket with the pressure. I think they had maybe 1 or 2 sacks, and those were late in the game, probably when Russell was kind of playing from behind and playing a little bit desperate in the passing game. But just during the course of the game, he was a real problem for them, throwing the ball, scrambling with the ball, having big plays, keeping drives alive. So, Russellville, I think, at the 1A level is a program, as the season goes along, barring injuries, that kind of thing, because they don't have the depth to, they can't weather that. they're going to be a team in 1A I think people are going to have to be concerned about. And they're kind of like Metcalf in a way. They've had their designs on this particular season because they've had these young guys and some holdovers.
They've got a bunch of holdovers. That's a big help. The extra year is a big boost to them.
Yeah, and they got 2 guys. They're not even playing yet.
Logan County.
Yeah, who moved over from Logan County. So if those 2 guys are eligible to play at any point in time during the season, I mean, that'll take care of one of the problems Russellville may have as the season goes along. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, to get a win is a good win. The Scotties will come back on this coming Friday. They'll play Monroe County. Monroe's struggling a bit at this point. They lost to, Campbellsville to open the season.
And Allen County Scottsville last week.
Yeah, Allen County Scottsville pretty much wore them out physically. And so that's kind of a game that I'm sure the Monroe County people aren't writing it off because they always look at the opportunity to beat Glasgow as a big opportunity. But I would say going into this, Glasgow would have to be a heavy favorite.
Heavy favorite.
Meanwhile, the Trojans kind of had the kind of game that probably when you get to the end of the night, they look back and say, we needed to win this game because we dug ourselves an early hole. We did a whole lot of good things to get back in this game, lost in double overtime. And there were some fascinating things out of that game. I mean, one of the things I got to listen to your broadcast with Jay on the way back from Russellville because you guys had a later night than I did, ironically enough.
Probably the only game in the state left.
Yeah, a lot of people may have been listening to the call on that game. But they had a couple of field goal attempts at the end of the game from Aiden Miller. Sounded like he had the leg, not the accuracy, which was kind of amazing.
42 and a 46-yard one, and the 42 one at the end of the regulation was off just inches. Plenty of leg. He got the ball there easily with the 46-yard.
Yeah.
And he definitely had the leg, the opportunity, and just barely missed it. But Barren completely shame they lost because they completely outplayed Adair the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Did not give up a point in the second half. Adair had 20 at the end at half and had 20 at the end of regulation.
Yeah.
Only had 2 first downs the second half, and for the game, Barren had more rushing yards, passing yards, and really outplayed them. Except they didn't win.
Yeah.
That's. And that's what it comes down to. They really played better overall and more. Barren got a fantastic performance from Drew Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best I've ever seen him play. At 24 carries, 133 yards, and a touchdown. And Donovan Bradshaw stepped in for Ryan Shirley, who went out real early with a hip injury. And Donovan had 2 touchdowns, carried 11 for 56, and I thought they played really well. When it comes to these overtimes, these sudden death, and high school is even different from every level plays it differently.
Yeah,
high school you get it at the 10, and the first play, Barren scored on a 10 yards right up the middle. Not up the middle, it was a little reverse. Gage Allen scored on that one, and missed the extra point, and then. Adair got it, scored on the very first play, and they went for 2 and missed that, and consequently Adair scores in double overtime and wins, and Barren misses a pass play on the last play and loses, and just a tough loss because it was a very, very winnable game, to say the least.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that I thought, just listening to the broadcast that I got to listen to, because I got to listen to most of the second half. On the way back and then once I got home. And the thing that stood out to me, you mentioned Drew Fisher and Donovan Bradshaw. It sounded sort of like Barren, with the combination of how their offensive line played in the second half, maybe found something that can work for them so that they can maybe spell Ryan Shirley, maybe utilize him more on defense if necessary, but just gives them a little more depth than maybe they were aware of going into the game, or at least maybe that's the way they wanted it to work.
I think it took a couple of things. The Barron's offensive line did play better in the second half. They also, they had a couple of kids on that offensive line did not play against Metcalf.
Right.
So they were back. And Adair, though Adair has numbers, they had, I think, 10 people that played both ways. That's what they listed. And it was very noticeable to me and to others that Adair just got tired.
Yeah.
And part of when you're playing both ways, and then when you can't stop somebody on the ground, that physically wears you out. And Barren just kind of sort of ran out of time. I say that, but then again, we had a shot in overtime, And they converted and we didn't. So, all's fair is, it's fair. But I thought overall Barren played better.
Yeah, and then their game, they were originally supposed to play at Russell County this Friday, but Russell County's in COVID protocols, and so Barren will be hosting Warren East. So that'll be fascinating.
Yeah, it's the second time this has happened. They're supposed to play Grayson and end up with Adair, and now supposed to play Russell and end up with Warren East. And, of course, Warren East is a team we've played. They were fairly common on our schedule for years.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time we've played them, I think, since Coach Griffith left.
Yeah.
Coach Griffith was at Barren, now he's at East. And, East bounced back with a good win this past week. They got shellacked by, I think, surprisingly by Logan.
Yeah,
and then came back with a I thought a really solid win this week.
Yeah, beat Ohio County. I will say this about both of their games in this sense. Now, Barren scrimmage Warren East, so these players are going to be familiar with each other because of the scrimmage. But I'll say this about Warren East's schedule. I think Logan has proven that a lot of people thought this would be the year they'd be headed back to what people think of Logan traditionally. But Todd Adler over there has got the program rolling. They play physically. They run the football. That first week, I don't think they either didn't complete or didn't attempt to pass against Warren East and beat them 37-0. And then Ohio County, I think, had 43 players on their roster for a 5A school. That's a pretty thin number. Also, their most talented players weren't back this year. So, I mean, it kind of looked like they had a dearth of talent. Warren East was able to feast on that. I still have questions about Warren East's defense, especially stopping the run. And if Barren found that formula they need between, Donovan Bradshaw and Drew Fisher, the quarterbacks, Will Childress, Jamison Bowie, getting Ryan Shirley out there, if they found a formula and they can make it work from the start of the game, not wait till the second half, then I think it'll be an interesting game come Friday night because Warren East will probably score points. They've got talent.
Yeah, they normally do.
Yeah.
Except for the first game. But, it should be a very good game. And who knows? Things change daily.
They do.
The one thing that I know, if a game is canceled early in the week, you got a really good chance of rescheduling.
Yeah. Yeah,
really good chance because it's like the transfer portal. I mean, there's
right.
teams always available and so forth.
Yeah, there's kind of a game. There's a Friday night transfer portal at the moment, more or less.
And I mean, just to give you an idea, it's worked out really well for Barren. I mean, two neighbor schools, Adair and East. It's not like we're traveling all across the state to find an opponent. I mean, these opponents are there and pretty equal too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we got to call Trinity for a game. I mean, these are pretty equal opponents, and I think overall, Barren, you're probably disappointed to be 0-2, but their performance has not been bad. I mean, it's something that you can see things out there, and we've played pretty well at times. We just haven't got that win yet, but it looks like that win is eventually going to be there.
Yeah. Well, and it'll be interesting. Like I said, this matchup with Warren East, it's a clash of styles. Real quick, we're going to do a little run around area scores and whatnot that we saw. I want to start off with the fact that Caverna on Saturday traveled up to Trimble County, which is 2 hours and some change away, and picked up a 38-36 win is what the actual score. I put the wrong score here on the sheet of paper.
That's their first win in a while, too.
Yes, it is. They had not won a game in a while.
That's congratulations. That's a good win for them.
And then this coming Saturday, they'll be traveling to Bracken County. That's another. Coach Lasley said he put together. They're not playing the district schedule.
Do you know their nickname?
Bracken County, the Brackens.
I think they're the Polar Bears.
Oh yeah, they are, aren't they? There's another one of your probably favorites in the state. That's an unusual name for.
I like Somersets and the
Bracken
Jumpers,
County,
the Briar Jumpers, and the Polar Bears.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I do kind of like that. These different team names than you expect from these high schools in Kentucky. Yeah, but that's where they'll be going this coming Saturday. I think that game's scheduled for 1:30. I'm sure we'll see what the heat index says. They may move the time of that game. Meanwhile, in other games, we already mentioned that Allen beat Monroe 42-12. You got to see probably this part of this game, the Hart County versus McCreary Central. Hart County won 42-18. Of course, Hart's in Glasgow's district. They're off to a pretty good start so far this season.
Yeah, 2-0.
Yep.
I mean, again, a lot of turnovers in that game, but Hart never had a lot of trouble against McQuarrie.
Yeah, and then Greenwood beat up on Franklin Simpson 36-13. Greenwood also off to a good start. The interesting thing about Greenwood this year is they're putting up points in these games.
They have been known the last few years. I think they started last year off 5-0.
Mm-hmm.
So they get off to good starts. And then, in fairness to them, they run into the South Warrens and Bowling Greens in their district. And it's not only do those teams beat you, but boy, psychologically they're tough to overcome some of their firepower.
Yeah, they take a toll on you. Speaking of those two teams, Bowling Green bounced back, beat McCracken County 14-10. I think it's fair to say Bowling Green has a good defense this season. Their offense keeps making mistakes. They lost that first week because of the turnovers, probably, to Highlands. And then South Warren, this one shocked me, to be honest with you. They lost to Hendersonville, Tennessee, 27-20. The week before, Hendersonville had been beaten by some school, I think that's in Murfreesboro. That may be a powerhouse. I don't know.
Yeah,
they lost 42-7, and they were 0-2 coming in this game. I just figured there was no way South Warren was losing.
I have no way to judge anybody outside the state, so I don't know. I don't know if Henderson is good, bad, ugly. I have no clue.
And then North Hardin beat DeSales pretty soundly, 43-0. That's a bounce back for them.
Yeah, and I don't think and Central Hardin routed Louisville Butler.
Yes.
They have not lost, and Meade County has not lost either.
Yeah. Barron's district's looking pretty
strong
thick at the moment.
Yep.
So those are some games around the area. Anything else about this past week's football that stood out to you, John?
Metcalf rolled over Bellevue.
That is true. They did.
56-8.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I thought they had a good team when I saw them. Mm-hmm. They backed it up.
Yeah, LJ and those guys over there being high on this particular squad has not been misguided thus far.
No, doesn't seem like it.
All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, there were other sports that actually happened over the weekend and last week. We're actually going to start off with some cross country because we had a couple of good performances by Barren County's girls, Gracie Reed and Chesney McPherson. They finished first and second in the Warren East Raider Twilight. That was the first major cross country event of the season, at least in this area. But I think the thing that impressed me most, Gracie Reed's time was 18:51.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just a fantastic, what is that, 3.2 miles, basically 5 kilometers?
Right. Well, and Chesney's 19:18. That's good, too.
Yeah, I mean, they were both rolling in that.
Of course, they finished the track year really strong.
They did.
Really, really strong as well, winning won the region, or, they –
yeah, they were 1 and 2 in the region, I believe.
And did well in the state. So, I mean, that's good, to not only they first and second in a pretty big meet.
Yeah, because Warren East, South Warren, there's Central Hardin, a lot of the other top programs in the state show up at this meet.
Yeah, that's great, and it's like anything else. Once you get that confidence, it doesn't matter what you do.
Mm-hmm.
It carries over to running as well.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a motivator too. When you start to do well and you have success, that motivates you to train and to get better. So, Catherine Bills is the head coach of that squad. Of course, she's a big-time runner, too.
Yeah.
You still see her run. She runs through town all the time.
Yeah.
So that's good for the girls and for Catherine.
I jokingly told Catherine during the track season that the only person who could ever have actually replaced Terry Reed as the track coach at Barren County was her, because she's also the only other track coach I ever see that just runs everywhere like Terry does. He runs everywhere during a meet, and so does she. And it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amusing, mentor and student now.
Well, it's also it's really always felt like it has to be good to when your coach knows what you're going through as a player.
Yeah,
and can actually train along with you. That's got to be a tremendous benefit.
Absolutely.
And she trains with them or can train with them and can, push them and so forth like that, because has done it and still going through that.
Yep. Meanwhile, Mia Cassidy also ran. She finished 32nd. She ran 21:58. Barren County had a boys team. I think there were a couple of Glasgow boys runners. Their times were further on down the list. I just kind of pointed these out because especially the top two. I mean, those were just fantastic times. Meanwhile, Barren County hosted the Battle of the Barrens volleyball tournament over the weekend. Went 8-2. Barren did. They lost twice to Metcalf County. I guess Metcalf County was technically the Battle of the Barrens champion. They won twice. 2 of the wins were by forfeit from teams that were unable to compete, I guess, because of COVID. So,
it's a lot of games in one day.
It was. They were all on Saturday.
Gee whiz.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I saw it too.
Good gracious.
You got to be committed to play that many volleyball games in a day. I guess they were at least kind enough. It was best of 3, and if it was a tiebreaker set, they just did to the 15. So, at least they were kind enough not to play like 5 full sets or whatever.
Well, I mean, it's an all-day affair.
Yeah, it is. And then Glasgow, they hosted the Scotty Classic over the weekend. It actually started on Thursday. They played Bardstown Bethlehem on Thursday.
We're talking about now we've switched to soccer.
Yeah, boys soccer now. That's right. Yeah, we're just running through around the world in 5 minutes or whatever.
That's right. Wild world of sports.
Yeah, it is. And so, so the Scotties opened that. They lost to Bethlehem 3-2. From what I saw, I went to that game. From what I saw, Bethlehem has a solid team.
They normally do.
Yeah,
it's a private school in Bardstown.
Yeah,
and they're known to be pretty good in a lot of sports.
Right. Yeah, so they lost that game. They bounced back on Saturday. They had an all-day affair planned. They had 3 games scheduled. The Scotties did. They got in 2 of them. They beat Hart County 5-1, beat Butler County 7-0. I think that game was called at halftime due to the heat index. They were supposed to play Taylor County at 4:30, which would probably have been their marquee matchup of the day.
Got Storm, too. Saturday.
Yeah, Storm came in, so that game ended up being canceled. So some of the games got cut short on that all-day affair, but they picked up a couple of wins there after the loss there to Bethlehem. And then the Barren County Trojans, they went and played in the Russellville Panther Classic, I guess is what they were calling it. They beat Lyon County 2-1, lost to Greenwood 10-0. Originally, I don't think Greenwood was in that thing. They just got the luck of the draw. I don't remember who Barron was supposed to play. It was not Greenwood initially. So Greenwood, one of those powerhouse programs, especially on the boys' side a lot of times, kind of gave Barron a hard time. This was after last week Barron had beaten Butler County 10-1 and came back. I think they were down 2-0 with like 8 minutes to go against Muhlenberg County last week and came back and tied that up. That was a pretty impressive finish. Kind of like the football team in a way. It's kind of like you look at it and say, well, if we could have figured out the first 42 minutes or whatever it was, we'd have been better off.
Yeah, I mean, scoring 2 in the last 8 minutes is not easy to do in soccer.
No.
Because oftentimes good teams in soccer, once they're up 2-0, they get very defensive.
Yeah.
It's hard to get clean shots. So.
Yep. Yeah, so that was a they didn't get the win, but I guess that was a good comeback for them. Kind of maybe sets him up for some success. They're supposed to play Allen County today in a 15th district game. We'll see how the weather holds out on that. We've got this Hurricane Ida band starting to come into our territory. I think tomorrow we're under a flash flood watch, I think is what it is.
Yeah, it's starting to fire up right now outside looking at over the square. Yeah.
So then there's a couple of soccer games scheduled for tomorrow. So yeah, that's what I mean. Is we'll see if they're probably in danger. But key here on the boys' side, after Barron plays Allen tonight, they have another district game on Thursday. They're going to take on Glasgow. That's one in the circle. It should be a pretty interesting game, I think.
5:30. They've had a lot of close games throughout the last couple of years, but it's fair to say I think Glasgow's had Barron's number.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see what happens. Hopefully they'll get that game in.
Yeah.
It's not just the weather could be a problem. It could be it depends on how much rain.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say because it's a grass.
Could be a muddy track. It could be not conditioned well enough to play on come Thursday, depending on how much rain we get the next couple of days.
And these schools can more easily reschedule than other schools.
Yeah,
I mean you're in the same community, so it's not as hard.
Well, they just they're just across the parking lot from each other.
That's right.
So they can wrap that up pretty easy. That's kind of the stuff that was going on last week as it relates to sports other than football. Anything else that you remember from last week or struck you from last week in some of these other sports?
No, it's just that the volleyball was interesting to play that many in one day.
Yeah.
That when I saw that happen, I went, wow, That's a lot of volleyball, but no, everything's continued to roll on. We didn't even mention golf, and golf is halfway through their season.
Yeah, they are. Because I think September 28th is when the region is played. I believe that's correct, and then the week after that would be the state tournament. Look, real quick though, let's mention golf because we do have some golfers who are putting in scores both on the boys and the girls side that put them in pretty good standing. On the boys' side first, Jamison Corbin for Barren County has been shooting low 70s. I think he finished tied for 6th this past Saturday at the Franklin Invitational. Bo Shelton, I think, shot his lowest round of the year so far. He shot 71, I think it was, and was 3rd in that same event. Both teams played pretty well overall. And then on the girls' side, Nina McMurtry's been playing pretty well, and Landry Steenbergen's scores have been coming down there for Barron, but Glasgow's still kind of setting the tone in this region right now. So, barring something unexpected, I mean, we look like we've got some golfers in our coverage area that are in pretty good shape as we close on the end of the season.
Yep, just got to keep it up.
Yep, got to keep it up. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we are back here on the Brown Sports Bag. One of the things I wanted to talk about is it's time for college football. It's kind of amazing.
Pastime.
Yeah, pastime. And, we've anticipated.
And it actually technically opened Saturday, right?
Yes.
Nebraska and who was it? Illinois?
Yeah. And there was another game. I don't remember.
UCLA and Hawaii.
That was it. Yeah, so the big conference teams are off and running. WKU plays this Thursday against UT Martin. I'm interested. Let's start here because I'm interested in the fact that Tyson Helton, I believe, said he expects the team to go 12-0. Now, that's coach speaking all the ways because it's a coach isn't about to say, well, we're probably going to lose this game or that game, but it's still kind of an absurd statement and just on its face of it. I guess if I'm them, I'm probably high on WKU's prospects this year. I mean, they've got a whole new crew of wide receivers and a quarterback and all kinds of other jazz. I guess we should be high on it.
I think it's fair to say they probably have as many transfers as any school in the country. Yeah. I don't know if anybody have more.
No, they have a bunch.
Yeah, because they did not sign a lot of incoming freshmen. It was mainly through the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got a lot of dudes in that have experience playing at the college level at various places.
Yeah,
and the struggle last year was at the quarterback position, and they think they have that solved by bringing in the quarterback from Houston.
Bailey
Baptist,
Zapp, I think is his name.
Yeah, and the offensive coordinator, and a couple of receivers with them. So, their defense has been good the last few years. It's the offense that really struggled last year, and if the offense takes off with kind of the talk is, and they've really talked this new offense up. They're going to throw it down the field and they're going to open it up, which I hope they do.
Yeah,
but it's hard for me to predict because I don't know any of the players. I mean, it's the men's team basketball is kind of that way too. I mean, it's a lot of new players coming in, and I just think it's going to. I think when you have that many new transfers come in, I do think it's important to get off to a good start.
Yeah, and
just for chemistry purposes and so forth, and they should handle UT Martin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're playing down in a class. UT Martin is at that next level.
Yeah, the FCS.
But that's what kind of threw Western off last year. They lost to a team they should have beaten last year.
That's right.
So, and they couldn't really score.
Yeah.
I would expect, hopefully, that Western can come out Thursday and put up some points because they got some tough games on their schedule. They got Indiana coming in, and they go the Army, and they go to Michigan State.
Yeah.
So, those are 3 games that are going to be difficult, and I think it's important they do get off to a good start. As much as anything, just to build that fan momentum and so forth,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you mentioned we had high hopes last year because it would be, we've expected Tyson Hilton's offense at some point in time to click because that's what he's known for, and that's what happened when he was there the first time as offensive coordinator.
And his first year, they did a good job.
That is true, but they just have not seemed to be able to find the quarterback to get it done for them or find somebody who's consistent at that position.
What's the third quarterback in 3 years?
Yeah. Well, and they brought in an offensive, the whole offense more or less with the offensive coordinator, quarterback, 2 receivers, I think it is, from, Houston Baptist that was like the number 1 offense in FCS last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they basically brought in they didn't just bring in a whole new idea. They transported an offense from one program into theirs.
True, other than Coach Helton is known for his offense. I know he has. I'm sure he has say so over it, and he knows a good offense when he's seen it before. So it's not like he's just we're just going to turn it over to I'm sure he has oversight.
Well, it is. It's kind of like it. You mentioned what you just said is the truth. He knows a good offense when he sees it. And he says, You know what? I like that offense. How about we have it?
And that's fine with me. I mean, that's okay because I do think it. And the people in this area, for Western's sake, I think it's important football-wise that they're exciting. Mm-hmm. They want to win, but they also you want to win and be exciting.
Right.
The worst thing you can be is boring and losing. and so
not good for the brand to be boring and losing.
And to sell tickets and so forth. And I'll just be honest with you, with the way college athletics is shifting around, with various alliances and things breaking apart, I think Western has an opportunity to put their name out there. Mm-hmm. And football is a big key. The better you play, the more opportunities it could render for you in the future. And I'm not saying they're going to leave anywhere or go anywhere, but they need to be in the conversation.
Well, and in essence, this is what has happened to them since they entered Division I as a football program, because initially it was a real struggle. They changed coaches and they
almost dropped the football program.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, they voted to drop the football program.
Yes, exactly. And so, they looked at all this and they said, well, let's bring in dynamic folks. I mean, and what they did was they took a gamble on a guy who was damaged goods, and that kind of set them going in a certain direction, led to their Jeff Brom and all the other stuff that kind of came after that. But they took that gamble and, they took that risk, and it put them on the map. And then they hit the not so great little spell there. And then they came back to Tyson Helton, who was probably from that glory period just right there with Jeff Brom and all, and said, okay, we need to get back to that. It's taken a little bit of time, but it feels like they're headed in that direction. And you're right. We haven't even had a chance to talk about the alliance stuff. I mean, because we talked about 3 weeks ago, we talked about the Oklahoma, Texas moving to the SEC. Since then, the Pac-12, I mean, we did mention it, but we haven't really talked about it. The Big 12 and the ACC said, all right, we're going to make some sort of alliance.
ACC.
Yeah, the ACC, we're going to make some sort of alliance. Now, what they're doing is not even really clear.
There's no contract. It's just an informal agreement to basically to kind of stay together and to talk.
Yeah.
But nothing's signed or anything like that. I don't really know what that means.
Well, but to your point about the WKU situation, because of the amorphous nature of that particular situation, these schools like WKU and many of these Conference USA, Sun Belt, all that have an opportunity maybe if they decide, okay, we need to figure out what we're going to do.
Well, the Big 12 has gone down to the Big 8.
Yeah.
I mean, they were called the Big 12, but they only had 10, and then they lost Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So they either will dissolve or they got to go get people.
Yeah, and at the moment it looks like they're on the dissolution path, not the get people path. And so, I mean, that's going to be fascinating to see how that works out. But you're right. This situation for WKU and these other programs is, here's our opportunity. We got to land on the map right now in such a spectacular way that people want to come to our university, want to come to our programs, want to see us on TV. We're exciting again and we're the thing again. And it's going to be critical.
And just add to the fact, it looks like the playoffs are going to expand to 12, which gives more schools, even at WKU level, a chance.
Yeah. Well, and going back to that alliance idea, if those different, what have been called those mid-level conferences can get together, that allows them as a unit to apply pressure for their programs, their better programs, their conference winners to get into that playoff system.
Right.
Instead of it just being run over by the Big Five, now Big Four, because there's no fifth anymore. So somebody's got to fill that gap, I suppose, and that's their opportunity, is to try to do that. But it starts on the field. You got to win. You got to beat UT Martin to start with.
Handily.
Yeah, I mean, you got to beat them like you're supposed to.
Right.
By all expectations. What are some other games that you saw that are coming up in this first week?
I'll be honest, I haven't looked that far ahead. I do think, didn't Georgia and Clemson play this week?
I believe that's correct,
okay.
Yes.
Well, that's obviously
that's a heck of a opening game.
It's a monster start.
Yeah.
And I think LSU goes to UCLA. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, it's wide open this weekend. I mean, college football is officially really getting underway.
Yeah. Next week, I'm going to tease a little thing I want us to do for next week there, John. Next week, the NFL finished up its preseason. but the season doesn't start till not this weekend, but the next weekend.
Thursday.
Yep. And so one of the things, it opens with the Bucks and I can't remember who they're playing.
Dallas,
that is correct. That's a pretty interesting starting game. Mm-hmm. But one of the things, I want us to come back next week and tell people who we think is going to win what, and which will be fascinating because there are several things about the NFL season that is just odd. The first is we won't know who's wearing what number because they changed the rules of who can wear what number. It's more college style. Mm-hmm. You can be a number 26 linebacker, I think it is, or you can be a number 8 wide receiver, the things you see in college. But, the NFL's always had this kind of uniform policy. You knew what the lineman numbers were, receiver numbers, defensive backs, whatever. So that's going to be interesting. And I really don't know why they changed that. Do you know why they changed that?
I'm sure to sell jerseys.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if it's like because that the tight end eligible kind of plays and all that. You had to check in, and it was based.
No, I think you're overthinking.
Do you think I am?
Yes, I think it's money.
You don't think it's just free substitution kind of situation?
Nope, I think it's money.
Probably. You're probably right.
Yep.
Follow the money.
Yep.
But I do think that's going to be interesting. The other thing is, as we've already seen in this preseason, I think we've had 3 key players already injured in the preseason. 2 of them, rookie running backs, was Etienne and Dobbins. Both are out for the rest of the season.
Dobbins is his second year, but yes. Mm-hmm.
So, those are key players that these teams were going to be relying on. I think there have been a couple of others that have been announced since yesterday or whatever. So we don't know how that's going to affect things. The COVID protocol situation in the NFL is one where they're basically like, it's on you, and if you screw it up, that's your problem and your team's problem, and so you better take care of business.
Yeah, they're not going to be moving games anymore.
No.
They either play or forfeit.
Yeah, so, that's going to impact, I am sure, at some point in time.
College, too.
Yeah, college, too. That's going to impact the outcomes of games because we're going to have key players who are going to miss games, not because they tore their ACL or broke their arm or whatever, but because they're in quarantine.
That's right.
And so, that's going to make the betting lines fascinating as you get ready for this NFL season. And then I just think there are some good young players in the league right now, across the league, but we also have some veterans who are going to shape the outcome of the season. We mentioned that Bucks Cowboys to start the season. Dak Prescott coming back. What kind of impact is that going to have? So it's a lot for us to kind of lay out and think about as we get ready to tell folks what we think is going to happen this season.
It's my favorite league. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we praised them last year because they ran everything extremely well. They did an extremely good job under the circumstances, which I guess is also why they have approached this season with the idea that, we did everything for you guys for you to play last year.
Get on board.
Yeah, now it's up to you. We're putting the ball in your field. And then I think that's going to be pretty interesting. I think it's going to be an interesting NFL season all the way around. Also, 17 games this year. So no 500 teams. Everybody's going to be above or below 500, either 9-8, 8-9. That's odd.
Well, you can be 8-8-1.
That is true. If there is that,
there are ties.
They've tried to eliminate them from the NFL, but no, sometimes they still succeed at tying each other.
1 10-minute overtime. Yep.
Yeah. And then real quick, before we get out of here, I want to talk about a story that popped up yesterday related to ESPN. And they do these the opening week, I guess is what they call it. They have like a high school football showcase. Now, through the years, we've seen things like DeMatha play Hoover out of Alabama, DeMatha out of California, top program in the nation, Hoover, Alabama playing. The one that they had last night was IMG Academy, which is kind of a new-ish prep program. I think it's out of Bradenton, Florida, and it's it's a gap year more or less between high school and college. And these players go in there to that program, and they're trying to get ready to go play in college, just expected to be college players, that kind of stuff. And then they were playing a school called Bishop Sycamore, which, ironically enough, I don't think there is historically a Sycamore Bishop that these schools are usually named after. And it turns out it may not even be a real school, but somehow they managed to talk the people who organize these games into showcasing them on Sunday night against IMG Academy. It was a lopsided game. And
it was on ESPN.
Yeah, it was on ESPN. It was their primetime game on Sunday night.
Yeah.
It was like the one that was supposed to be the showcase game. And the school doesn't have a school. its physical address is a training center in a place in Columbus, Ohio. It has a P.O. box for a mailing address. The players obviously don't live on a campus. Some of them, it seems, may actually have already graduated high school. And I'm telling you all this at the moment, not just because of the ESPN situation, because this team's supposed to play Johnson Central on Friday night here in Kentucky.
They won't.
Yeah, I mean, but isn't it weird? I mean, how does it happen that they even wind up on people's schedules? I mean, I just don't understand all this.
I don't understand the anything about these academies.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of them. It seems like a lot of players are taking advantage of. It doesn't seem like education is a priority at all.
Yeah.
It's just specifically you're just going to school for a sport. And, I wouldn't have watched that game if it was in my backyard anyway. I'm not. I love high school sports, but I don't like watching high school sports on ESPN and things like that. It seems to me too glorified to me. I just don't like it. And there's other schools that have occasionally popped up in Kentucky that were considered prep schools that never lasted very long, and it seemed like it always ended in a financial disaster. Yeah, among many other problems,
right?
Legal and illegal.
Yeah.
So this I know nothing about this school, but it seemed like ESPN was completely taken off guard when once they started showing the game live. It was a mismatch.
Yeah,
I mean it was a no contest.
Yeah, the announcers were like,
the announcers were concerned midway through the game of the health and safety of Bishop Sycamore, that they weren't prepared. They didn't have the depth, and they were not near the skill level as the team they were playing.
Yeah, and it was it's to me it's the kind of thing, I guess, as an investigative journalist background. Once I saw it, man, I just started going down the rabbit hole of how did this even, I mean, what is this place? How did it even happen? Now, I've not written a story about it, but the Columbus Dispatch did, and you can find it online. And I printed it out, so we could look through it. But it's just a fascinating read on so many levels, because the proliferation of these types of they're not attached to either a high school organization like the KHSA or even the Department of Education, because in Ohio they've passed some law that allows a non-traditional, non-charter, non-tax funded school to exist.
Just call it a school?
Yeah. I mean, in essence, I guess it's kind of a workaround for the homeschool thing where people say I have a school in my home and they want to participate in some form of athletics, and so they can, field a team and all that kind of stuff. I guess that's what this is. I have no idea. But obviously, a lot of times it's supposed to be like religious affiliated kind of schools. But obviously, these people took full advantage of this law with no intent of following any aspect of the idea of traditional education at all.
And they got on TV.
And I'm guessing that was the whole idea, was to get as much publicity as possible. And I suppose that has worked for them, because there's been a lot of digital ink spilled on them since then. But it is still one of those things. I mean, the organization that sets up these football games, I mean, they don't do any vetting. I mean, it's like they sent them a roster and said, we have these D1 prospects, and they were like, great, we'll put you on TV.
Yeah, it was a little surprising that the team wouldn't vet it. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make it on a national platform that way is a little that's surprising. Somebody didn't do their job.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't take a whole lot of research to find that this cannot possibly be legitimate.
Of course, when you go down that cycle, you go down that line of stuff, whether at times AAU, these prep schools, I mean, you're starting to dabble in a lot of things that are not sometimes on the up and up.
Yeah.
As bad as the NCAA takes criticism, and the KHSA takes a lot of, I think, unfair criticism, you better be glad they're around, because they do provide order and structure, which is very needed, and because without that, then it's the wild, wild west.
Well, and a lot of people don't want to be held accountable, which is why they bucket these things. But at the same time, that accountability provides insurance to parents and families that they are They are buying the good that is being sold.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go outside of those constraints or those rules and regulations, even if you don't like them, then you literally are gambling with your money about what you're putting it into, because there's always a snake oil salesman out there wanting to convince you that their way of training your child is the best way, or their program is the number one. And people talk a lot about their kids going to college and playing sports and all that stuff. But I mean, what was it? The numbers like, what, less than 1% of all people who participate in high school athletics go on to college and compete?
Yeah, and there's a ton of people that sign too.
Yeah.
And they don't last very long either.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, because, they just don't.
Sometimes the signing is all the child wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe the parents.
Too. And the parents too. But yeah, the actual number of people that actually make it and participate it's amazingly low. Nothing wrong with dreaming the dream. And trying to achieve your goal and pursue it. But there comes a time where you have to eventually figure out if that's the right path.
Well, and I'm with you. You need to chase the dream, but you also need people around you who are like showing you the actual process for accomplishing your dream, not just the pipe side of that dream.
True.
And the other thing that I also think about is that a lot of people enjoy the glory days of high school. This makes me think about this do-over-year thing.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy the glories of high school and that kind of thing, and they want to live it for as long as they possibly can. And I understand that. I mean, I get it. I'm sure a lot of people had fantastic experiences.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that comes back to the reality thing. You need people around you who are pointing at the idea that you still have to move forward in life at some point in time. You can't stay here forever.
All right.
It's just not going to go well if you try. You're going to, wind up in some bad situations because you're spending your time when you're 20-something years old hanging around high schoolers.
Mm-hmm.
That usually doesn't work out well for you. So, those are things. They need people who give them that reality check. But back to, like you said, about the organization, that kind of stuff. There has to be those checks and balances are in place to protect you, not to punish you.
I agree.
And I wish people would spend a little more time realizing that and a little less time
trying to get around them.
And then crying whenever they're held accountable, because the system is designed to hold everyone accountable. I get sometimes people get away with things, or you feel like they do, because life's not fair. But, in the end, those rules and regulations are a positive thing. All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We will be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.